Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are pulling back the curtain on some really incredible insights from the Foundry by Forge College. We're diving headfirst into one of the absolute highest stakes challenges in all of Web3, and that's building the invisible safety nets that protect digital wallets. Think about it. When keys get lost or a device is stolen, how on earth do we get legitimate users back into their accounts safely? We're going to explore exactly how developers architect systems that keep the rightful owners inside while keeping attackers completely locked out.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because the core issue here is honestly a terrifying premise. It's the kind of thing that keeps wallet developers up at night. Just imagine being completely locked out of your life savings, your entire digital identity, all your assets. It's a total nightmare, right? You absolutely need a way back in, but here's the massive paradox of recovery. To create a way for you to recover your digital vault, developers essentially have to build a new door, and any door that lets you in is a door that a hacker is going to spend all day trying to pick.
Section 1, the wallet recovery dilemma. We've got a central trade-off to navigate here.
See, the very act of building a safety door for legitimate users inherently creates a potential backdoor for attackers to exploit. If developers just slap on a simple password reset link, well, an attacker who compromises your email now suddenly owns your entire vault. So we have to be smarter. It really comes down to this central trade-off. On one hand, we want strong verification evidence. We want absolute, undeniable proof that it's really you. But on the other hand, requiring more proof, checking your email, your phone, pinging your social media, contacting your trusted friends, that creates a massive attack surface. By demanding all that extra evidence, we inadvertently give hackers a much larger target area to poke around in. If you have 5 different verification systems, that's literally 5 different systems an attacker might try to compromise.
Moving right along to Section 2, staging the rescue operation through controlled escalation.
So instead of having a single front door with just one lock, we need to think of recovery like a highly secure digital vault. We don't just put one single guard at the entrance. We use escalating levels of security. Now, to get past these guards, you need what's called an attestation. This is basically a verified piece of digital evidence that proves a specific claim about your identity. Think of it kind of like a digital ID card, or even a signed voucher from a highly trusted friend that you slide over to the vault's security guard. You're basically presenting it and saying, hey, I lost my key, but look, here are 3 attestations proving I am exactly who I say I am. The security guard then looks at your attestations and decides exactly which stage of authorization you actually qualify for. Honestly, a nightclub bouncer analogy works perfectly for this. The first stage is immediate. If you roll up with rock-solid evidence, the ultimate VIP pass, the bouncer just unclips the velvet rope and lets you right in. Boom, access restored instantly. But the second stage is time-locked. Say you have some OK ID, but maybe it's not absolutely perfect. The bouncer says, all right, wait in the lobby for 24 hours while I run a background check. That delay is absolutely crucial because it gives the real owner time to notice and cancel the recovery if it's actually an attacker trying to sneak in. And finally, you've got manual review. If your evidence is super flimsy, the bouncer isn't letting you in at all. They're calling the casino boss, which might be human operators or some kind of off-chain arbitration system, to figure out what the heck is actually going on.
Behind the scenes, developers are actually calculating which stage you get using a pretty straightforward math heuristic. They assign a weight point value to different types of verification. So a guardian, like a highly trusted friend or maybe a hardware wallet you set up previously, that's worth a massive 3 points because it is super secure. Something like a web ID might be worth 2 points. And way down at the bottom, good old SMS text is worth barely a single point. And why is that? Well, we all know how ridiculously easy it is for hackers to pull off a SIM swap and hijack a phone number these days. So the math literally dictates your access. A developer might set a hard rule saying you have to accumulate 6 points for that immediate VIP access, or maybe just 3 points to get shoved into the time-locked waiting room.
Section 3, separating policy from crypto. Let's look at why developers absolutely must decouple these rules.
As a system architect, it's absolutely critical that you completely untangle human policy, like deciding how many points an SMS is worth, from the underlying cryptographic math that actually proves the attestation is real. The rules, those are human decisions. But the math, that is immutable truth. And to enforce that math, we use something called a nonce. A nonce is just a unique number that gets used exactly once. This is vital to stop replay attacks. Imagine you actually successfully recover your wallet today using your 6 points of attestations. If an attacker intercepts that data packet on the network, what's stopping them from just copying and pasting your old successful recovery attempt tomorrow to steal your vault? The nonce. That's what stops them. It makes sure that every single recovery request is uniquely stamped with the current time. The cryptographic digest checks that nonce, sees it's an old stamp, and stops the hacker cold in their tracks. But wait, Before we can finalize this whole rescue operation and execute the cryptography, developers have to normalize and sort all the attestations perfectly. What does that mean? It means organizing all your digital evidence precisely, like putting the issuers in strict alphabetical order or sorting everything by timestamps. You have to do this because the cryptography needs the data to look exactly the same every single time to create a secure, deterministic, and totally unforgeable audit trail. If your evidence is even slightly out of order, the math just fails, and that vault door stays firmly locked.
Section 4. Scoring your recovery resilience. Let's see how the wider Web3 programs over at Forge College teach developers to actually measure their vault strength. The ultimate goal here is to build a resilience scoring function that ingests your entire recovery proposal and grades the whole thing on a scale from 0 right up to a perfect 100. Obviously, a high score means your design brilliantly balances speed and safety. A low score, well, that means you've left massive, glaring vulnerabilities wide open for attackers to just waltz right through. Having this scoring system helps developers quickly spot their weak points way before they ever push the code live.
But getting that 100 isn't easy because the system generates automated failure flags that literally deduct points. It strictly penalizes bad habits. For instance, the centralized issuers flag pops up and dings you if more than half your attestations come from one single tech company. Because, honestly, that's a massive single point of failure. Low-weight flags happen if you try to build a recovery relying on just an SMS text, and stale attestations penalizes you if the evidence you're providing is getting too old, say over 90 days. The system demands fresh proof that you are exactly who you say you are.
The crucial takeaway here is that every single role you rely on has a failure mode, which means it requires a highly targeted mitigation. Say you set up a guardian group with your 3 best friends. The failure mode? Collusion. What if your buddies decide to gang up on you? Or maybe all their laptops get hacked at the local coffee shop? The mitigation for that is requiring heterogeneous guardians, mixing up hardware, software, and institutions, and rekeying periodically. Relying on a platform attester, the failure mode there is centralized downtime. What if they just go out of business? You mitigate that with a multi-attester requirement. Using a device proof like Face ID, the failure mode is simply losing your phone. The mitigation is having time-locked fallback guardians ready to step in. You really have to explicitly map the chaos of the real world to specific, targeted solutions.
Section 5. Designing the ultimate workflow. Let's look at the chronological blueprint developers actually use for this.
So let's walk step by step through this 5-stage workflow to build that invisible safety net. Step 1. Define the scope. What exactly are we recovering? Is it just a signing key? Step 2. List your allowable verification types. Are we accepting guardians, full KYC proofs, basic SMS? Step 3. Assign the weights and stages. How many points is each thing worth, and does that get you immediate or time-locked access? Step 4. Decide on trust placement. Are we doing all these complex checks on-chain or maybe off-chain to save some money? And Step 5. Plan monitoring and audit artifacts. Who gets a loud alert the second a time lock starts counting down? By explicitly separating the scope, the verification, and the trust placement, developers create really clear decision points where they can insert massive roadblocks to stop attackers dead in their tracks.
Now, if you take away absolutely nothing else from this explainer, let it be this core philosophy. Treat recovery as a staged authorization rather than a single event. A truly resilient recovery is not just handing over the master keys to the kingdom because someone clicked forgot password. No way. It is a highly careful, controlled escalation of trust. It's this intricate dance of gathering diverse evidence, scoring it against strict policies, slapping on cryptographic nonces to prevent replay attacks, and using time itself as your ultimate defense mechanism.
But Web3 is constantly evolving, which leaves us with a pretty provocative question for the future. What happens to all these careful, deliberate stages when we start introducing gas abstraction? Seriously, when we completely change who actually pays the network fees for that recovery transaction, how does that fundamentally alter the security dynamics and the user experience? It is a fascinating puzzle, and honestly, it's the very next step in wallet evolution. I highly encourage you, the focused learner, to head over to forge.college to continue exploring this and so many other amazing Web3 deep dives. Thank you so much for joining me today on this explainer, and keep exploring those secure, resilient systems.